The 2026 hurricane season, it's going to be slow, so just go ahead and relax. Take the summer off, let your licenses lapse, skip all the storm prep. Why not? That's exactly what your competition is going to do, and that's why you're going to eat their lunch. I'm Matt, and I've been in the catastrophe claims industry for almost 3 decades, and in this video, I'm going to give you the bad news, good news of what 2026 is looking like work-wise for adjusters. Bad news first, starting now. So here's what Colorado State University is forecasting for 2026. 13 named storms versus the 30-year average of 14.4, 6 hurricanes, average of 7.2, and 2 major hurricanes where we have normally an average of 3.2. And their overall measure of destructive potential, called the accumulated cyclone energy, or ACE, is forecast at 90 compared to an average of 123. So yeah, below average across the board. The big driver behind this forecast is a transition that's already underway in the Pacific Ocean. We're currently in a weak La Niña, but CSU expects that to flip to El Niño by the time we hit peak hurricane season mid-September, with potentially a moderate to strong El Niño. So what does that have to do with Atlantic hurricanes? Well, pretty much everything. When El Niño takes hold, it shifts convective activity eastward across the Pacific. That shift pumps strong upper level winds across the Atlantic basin, and we call that vertical wind shear. So think of vertical wind shear kind of like this. A hurricane needs the whole atmospheric column to be moving in roughly the same direction, right? When wind shear is high, the upper atmosphere is cranking in one direction while the surface is doing something different. That tears a developing storm apart before it can organize. It literally decapitates the hurricane before it can become a problem. El Niño years historically produce more of that shear, so fewer storms survive, fewer storms form in the first place. That's what's driving this particular forecast down. Of course, there's also the jet stream factor. Even storms that do develop can get caught in mid-latitude flow, which again is the jet stream, and get steered northeast out into the open Atlantic, where they wind down over cold water and never touch land. No landfall, no claims. CSU also notes that sea surface temperatures in the western tropical Atlantic are actually warmer than normal right now, but cooler than normal in the eastern and central Atlantic, where most storms develop. That eastern cool down reduces the fuel supply early in a storm's life. So you've got El Niño wind shear destroying storms, jet streams steering survivors out to sea, and cooler storm development zones. And that's the recipe for a below average season. This all sounds like bad news piled on top of more bad news for adjusters, but Colorado State University says it right in their own forecast summary. It only takes one hurricane making landfall to make it an active season. They're talking to homeowners, but I'm talking to you as an adjuster. You don't need a record-breaking season. You don't need 10 storms. You just need one. One Ian, one Harvey, one Katrina, one storm that tracks into a populated coastline, stalls out, and dumps catastrophic damage on a major metro, and that translates into a deployment. Here's the thing about wind shear and jet streams. They don't work on every storm. Some storms find a gap, they develop fast, they stay organized, and they thread the needle before the shear can rip them apart. They find a track that keeps them out of the jet stream's reach and puts them right into the Gulf Coast or the Carolinas or Florida. We've seen it happen in El Niño years before. 1992 was technically a very quiet season. There were only 7 named storms, but one of those was named Andrew, which was a category 5. $27 billion in damage in 1992 dollars, which is $63 billion adjusted to 2026 dollars, right? And last year in April, Colorado State University forecast 17 named storms and 9 hurricanes, an above average busy season forecast. And that season generated the 5th most destructive energy in the satellite era after September 16th alone. And not one hurricane touched the U.S. mainland last year, not one, and nobody forecast that, okay? NOAA says it explicitly. Landfall is only predictable about a week out. The seasonal forecast tells you how many bullets are in the gun, but it can't tell you which direction it's pointed. Meanwhile, the storms that did form were monsters last year. Hurricane Melissa tied the 1935 Labor Day hurricane for the 3rd most intense hurricane ever recorded and produced the highest wind gust ever recorded in a tropical cyclone at 252 miles an hour. The bottom line, a below average forecast like 2026 can still produce the one storm that makes your year. And an above average forecast like 2025 can produce 0 deployments and 3 Category 5 hurricanes that nobody in the US ever filed a claim on. The number in April means almost nothing. The track in August means everything, right? And nobody knows that track in April right now. Now for the good news. Let's be real about what a forecast released in April actually is. This is CSU's longest range, lowest confidence forecast of the year. They update it 3 more times, June 10th, July 8th, and August 5th. Those later forecasts, especially the August one, carry a lot more weight because we're actually seeing what's happening in real time. The April forecast is a probabilistic starting point based on current conditions. If El Niño strengthens like they expect, the forecast can hold. If it stalls out, if La Niña hangs around a little bit longer, if the Atlantic sea surface temperatures spike, that whole picture can shift. And the point is, don't treat this April number as the final answer. Watch the June update, okay? That's when the picture starts to come into better resolution. All right, so what are you supposed to do with all this as an independent adjuster? Well, you do not put your deployment prep on hold because CSU says this might be a below average season. And this, again, this is just for the tropics. This has nothing to do with hail, wind, tornadoes, etc. Right? Here's what below average actually means in practice. Maybe the Gulf gets hit once instead of 3 times, right? Maybe 1 season-making storm tracks into the Carolinas instead of 2. You still have to be ready. The IA who's licensed, who's got their gear staged, who's fully onboarded with the major IA firms before June, that person is going to capture that one deployment. The person who saw below average and threw their hands up in defeat early, this person is going to be watching from the bench while somebody else, you perhaps, works the claims that they might have gotten. So here's your action list. Get your state adjuster licenses current in these target states. We're talking from Texas to North Carolina, any state that touches the Gulf or the Atlantic, get all of those licenses. Apply and onboard with the major IA firms now while it's still quiet. You do not want to be waiting on a background check or a whiz quiz when the storm just made landfall. I promise you, early birds get the worm on cat deployment, so you want to be in the first wave, not praying that there's a second or 4th wave of deployments. Gear up. Make sure you have all the gear you need, that your Xactimate skills are current, and that your vehicle is ready for a lot of miles and idling hours. Do not start any of this when the storm is on the radar. And watch for the June 10th CSU update. If El Niño weakens faster than expected, this forecast could shift notably higher. June is when you'll start seeing real insights for what the peak of the season might look like. The CSU forecast tells you the odds. It does not tell you which side of the odds you're going to land on. And if you're ready to become an independent property adjuster, find out how to get started and how much you can make in this video right here. And as always, thank you so much for watching and have a great storm.